This is good stuff, man. Okay. Hi, everyone. I want to talk. I'm going to read this book. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do. Chapter 3. Dumbing us to death. An ideological fifth column subverted American education in the early days of the 20th century, with the leader of the movement, Daniel Coit Gilman, the first president of Johns Hopkins University and the Carnegie Institute. Oh, I see what I'm saying. Let me read this again. An ideological fifth column subverted American education in the early days of the 20th century, turn of the century, last century, with the leader of the movement, Daniel Coit Gilman. Gilman studied at the University of Berlin in 1854-1855 at the same time that Wilhelm Wundt taught there. Now, if you have, so this is a continuation of talking about, hi James, talking about eugenics and engineering human consciousness and mass control of the population. Okay, so if you haven't seen the Storytime, the first one, chapters 1 and 2, it would be incredibly important for you to go back after this and watch that, because there's a lot of juiciness in there. So, after Gilman, Wundt's materialistic spin on the subjects of the mind and soul, or lack thereof, would dominate the thinking of the most influential of American educators. The result was that children would soon after be viewed as something akin to lab rats, to be put through mazes, their characters molded at the whims of the educational totalitarians. Another form of Germanic thinking informed Gilman's views. He was a member of the Skull and Bones Society. Skull and Bones is a highly secret, ritualistic society based at Yale University that has been called the most powerful organization in America. Incredibly, Skull and Bones may be a front for that most mysterious of secret societies, the Illuminati. Remember, this was written in 1999, okay, 20 years ago. The German organization from which Skull and Bones obtained its charter appeared within a year after the outlawing of Adam Weishaupt's group in Bavaria, and additionally an inscription found in the Sanctum Sanctorum of the Bonesmen at Yale is nearly identical in wording to that of a ceremony cited in Proofs of a Conspiracy, an early condemnation of the Illuminati by Robeson. Like the Illuminati, Skull and Bones initiates refer to the group as the Order. I just need to breathe. Hold on. Phew, got to clear. Just reading this stuff, you guys, is like, oh my God. The Last Civilization Reset. Yes, I am, Katum. I don't know how to say your name. Katum? I am talking about the Last Civilization Reset, actually. So during the turn of the century, or actually in 1859, the Carrington event took place, which was a solar flash. And also at the turn of the century, there is talk and conspiracy about there being a mud flood. I believe that either the solar flash event caused the mud flood, or the mud flood was a separate event. I also believe, and have done research, but I'm not 100% on this, but Tartaria was the civilization that existed prior, And in that civilization, there were giants that walked among men, and there were buildings built, very elaborate buildings that were built all over the world. And there were world fairs every year in like Chicago and all these other places. And there's all these elaborate buildings that were built. And you can see where there's all these floors that are underground, and then the surface of the earth comes up, and like there's a little window, and then the street, right? So there's like a window, but there's a whole floor underneath. So it's as if the whole level, a plasma pulse. Yes. So you're saying that the solar flash Kadam was the plasma pulse? Is that what you're saying? We have to have a conversation, you and I, bro. Anyway, let me go back to this. Let me go back to the book that I'm reading. Let me stay on track, on focus, because this information in this book is actually really important to what's happening right now. So as I just read, they were talking about children being lab rats, okay? This is literally a concept and consciousness that the 1/10 of the 1% are operating under, and feel that humans are separate, their souls are separate, and they're just physical, and that they can be played with, eliminated, whatever, and it doesn't matter, they're useless, according to them. Okay? So, since the formation of Skull and Bones, about 2,500 persons have been inducted into the secret group, with a small group of Eastern establishment families forming the core of the group. These families include the Allen, Bundy, Gilman, Perkins, Wadsworth, Phelps, and Lord families. Haven't even heard of any of those, have you? Maybe a few. Other families who rose to wealth in the 18th and 19th century have been added to this group, including the Harriman, Davison, Rockefeller, Payne, Pillsbury, and Weyerhaeuser groups. A third group, not Bonesmen, have acted as intermediaries between Skull and Bones and the financial hub of London. This group includes the Warburg, Schiff, Guggenheim, and Meyer families. Undoubtedly, the most important influence that Skull and Bones has had on the world is through the world of politics. Since the turn of the century, the direction of American statecraft has been largely steered by prominent bonesmen from the Harriman, Bundy, Taft, Stimson, Bush, and other families. Although I do not recommend that you hold our breath for waiting for the establishment media to avail you of this fact. Written 20 years ago, remember that. According to accounts of the time, members of the Skull and Bones took over the administration of Yale University, and in the late 1800s, while Daniel Coit Gilman was employed there, and it is reported that all presidents of Yale since that time have been either bonesmen or closely affiliated with that group. Yale and Skull and Bones have provided fertile recruiting grounds for American intelligence agencies, with an in-house club for bonesmen existing in the CIA, according to Covert Action Information Bulletin. The term spook, CIA jargon applied to spies, in fact was a Yale expression designating a member of a campus secret society. After becoming head of Johns Hopkins University, Daniel Coit Gilman hired another wound-trained specialist who not coincidentally happened to be a bonesman. This was G. Stanley Hall, who took over the psychological lab at the university. Hall also founded the American Psychological Association and American Journal of Psychology, and mentored the career of Fabian socialist and New World educator John Dewey. John Dewey, who went on to become the most influential teacher of this century, also studied under George Sylvester Morris, a Hegelian philosopher, Hegelian dialectic, who had taken his doctorate at the University of Berlin under the same teachers as Gilman. Dewey was among the first to promote school as a mechanism for the creation of a socialist world order and as a forum for enforcing conformity of the masses rather than as a place to learn the 3 R's. In 1899, Dewey said, Children who know how to think for themselves spoil the harmony of the collective society, which is coming where everyone is interdependent. One reason for the success of Dewey's progressive education is that it was backed to the hilt by Rockefeller and Carnegie money. Money. Dewey, for many years, was the honorary president of the National Education Association, founded in 1857. The group was founded as a lobbying organization for teachers, but soon aligned itself behind a scarlet psychopolitical banner of progressive education, a delightfully sounding term that conceals the brainwashing modus operandi pioneered by the Soviets. By the turn of the century, the NEA, the National Education Association, was working in full support of Dewey's plans, advocating the dumbing down of the masses into a malleable unit, as well as a one-world Fabian socialist view. A 1934 NEA report avowed, a dying laissez-faire must be completely destroyed, and all of us, including the owners, must be subjected to a large degree of social control. This one-worldly view persists in current NEA literature, but it has been recontextualized in recent times as a liberal viewpoint. The group now issues the following pronunciamento in its NEA journal. The teacher, ... can do much to prepare the hearts and minds of children for global understanding and cooperation. At the very top of all the agencies which will assure the coming of world government must stand the school, the teacher, and the organized profession. Another American student of Wundt was James McKean Cattell, who was Wundt's assistant in Leipzig in the years of 1883 through 1886. Cattell was also deeply influenced by Francis Galton, which was mentioned in the founder of eugenics. In 1891, Cattell took over the psychology department at Columbia University and spent the rest of his life disseminating Wundtian eugenics doctrine through an abundance of magazines and reference works he edited and wrote. These and other materialist Wundtians and Fabian one-worlders, founded by the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, and others intent on the suppression and pacification of the populace of the world, completely remade the face of American education in the 20th century. The agenda that they pursued has culminated in an all too familiar situation of American education today, in which the majority of persons graduated from high school are functionally illiterate and ill-prepared for doing anything else than saying yes to Big Brother and his telescreens. From the standpoint of the social controllers, there are many advantages to keeping the populace stupid, not the least being that the less intelligent a person is, the more susceptible he is to exterior control. Currently, one of the primary thrusts in American educational brainwashing goes by a variety of names, including mastery learning, world-class education, common core of learning, and outcome-based education. But which is most commonly referred to as Goals 2000. Written into law by Bill Clinton in 1994, Rockefeller monies have launched literally hundreds of books into the educational market pushing Goals 2000. Promoted by the National Education Association, the literature describes Goals 2000 as an academic/behavior modification plan based on control theory/reality therapy. The simple purpose of Goals 2000 is populist control and promotion of the totalitarian world order. Instead of teaching children the academic skills that most parents favor, Goals 2000 and its educational offshoots emphasize life adjustment skills, family life education, and environmental stewardship. Academic study is de-emphasized while cooperative attitudes are mandated, including attitudes which significantly seem to bolster a eugenics agenda in the mind of the child, such as the attempted normalizing of homosexuality and playboyism and abortion as a form of birth control. Now, the person that wrote this book, I'm just going to say this right now, this person is very neutral in their standpoint. They're simply reporting what was going on at the time at the turn of the century. So it's not that this person is like is homophobic or anything like that. He's literally just creating the scenario and showing you what it is that they are doing in relation to these things, okay? Providing a hint of what the future of American education is going to be like is a Goals 2000 program that has been adopted in 40 states, the Parents as Teachers program. It is a program that would be more aptly termed Teachers as Parents program. Under this plan, children are given a personal computer code number by which they can be tracked for the entirety of their life. And a parent educator visits the homes of students in a minimum of 8 times a year to see that mom and dad are giving Junior his tranquilizers and doing their bit in programming a good little robot. This is real, you guys. This is real. This isn't fake. This is real. Another offshoot of Goals 2000 is the Oregon option. Oregon. State of Oregon. Which was signed into being on December 5th, 1994 by the entire Clinton cabinet and members of the Oregon congressional delegation. This program was developed by the administrations of former Oregon governors Mark Hatfield, look him up, and Neil Goldschmidt, look him up, and was drafted under the direction of Goldschmidt, a member of the Trilateral Commission. Persons backing the plan included members of the Council on Foreign Relations, the World Bank, the Carnegie Foundation, and the Rand Corporation. One of the main thrusts of the Oregon option is to seemingly transition children from school into the industrial workforce with apprenticeships provided by large corporations. Again, under the Oregon option, all children conceived in Oregon are entered into a huge database. All expectant parents will be required to attend parenting classes. Once the child is attending school, home visits will be undertaken by school teachers and administrators to determine if the family is fit for rearing the child. Those families deemed to be unfit or offering development neglect can be ripped asunder, with children shunted into foster homes or state-run facilities. This is actually already happening and is well developed in the state of Oregon. Furthering the goals of the social planners, perhaps the most destructive current trend of the educational establishment is the wholesale drugging of students. Drugs, especially amphetamines and Ritalin, are commonly used to dose school children throughout America. Ritalin is a highly dangerous stimulant that is, according to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Association, more addictive than cocaine. It also has a wide variety of other negative side effects, including nausea, insomnia, the inhibition of growth, nervous tics, and potential brain damage. A current estimate of the number of U.S. children being drugged with Ritalin is 3 to 5%, and in excess of 2 million children in the year 1999. Since most of the children to whom the drug is given are male, it has been estimated that 10 to 12% of all male school children in the U.S. between the ages of 6 and 14 are being zombified with Ritalin. This drugging is being done because of the alleged brain malfunctions that cause the children to be hyperkinetic or hyperactive. In most cases, the children have been diagnosed by their teachers, almost none of whom have the medical credentials to do such an assessment. The main problems that drugs are supposedly used to handle are classed as attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. These conditions have in fact never been proven to exist outside of the imagination of medicos and sociatrists. Medicos and sociatrists. Those are good. I like those. Those are funny. But instead, are catch-alls that include a wide variety of common childhood problems, including inability to concentrate, nervousness, fidgeting, interrupting people, and disciplinary problems. Oh, you mean they're kids? No consistent brain abnormalities have been demonstrated to be linked to ADD or ADHD. Although brain disorders, including cortical atrophy, have been shown to have been caused, in some cases, by long-term treatment with Ritalin and other drugs commonly prescribed for children. The symptoms that educators are treating with drugs may in fact have nothing to do with congenital brain defects, as they have argued, but with a number of other less mysterious factors, including poor nutrition, fostered by parents either too poor, irresponsible, or dumbed down themselves to provide decent food for their kids, encouraged by a criminal food production industry, more intent on moving cheap, sugar-coated, chemically dyed, pesticide-poisoned swill than in providing healthy food. Sugar, pesticides, and chemical additives may be a key factor in causing what is termed ADD and ADHD. Television and other media. Kids are estimated to watch 6 hours per day of an electronic medium deliberately designed to foster a short attention span with quick 3 to 5 second visual cuts, purposely stimulating the kind of artificial agitation that induces a child to respond to commercials. Is it any wonder that these kids have a short attention span? Remember, this was written in 1999, just prior to the cell phone being introduced. 2000 is when the personal cell phone became a thing, and personal computers also. Remember that. So this is all before that, okay? Everything I'm reading happened prior to the last 20 years. So, you know. Another negative aspect of the pop media is the abundance of sexual and violent images disseminated via TV, movies, hyper-violent video games like Mortal Kombat, and music with violent sexual gangsta ghetto rap. Remember, 1991 is when that went into place. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but there was a secret meeting in Hollywood, and that's when that happened. Okay. There are many studies showing that when television is introduced to a community, that violent acts double over the course of a few years. Let me read that again. There are many studies showing that when television is introduced to a community, that violent acts double over the course of a few years. As an example of the character of current media that is aimed at children, while waiting in an office recently, I was surprised to find a depiction, that's funny, of full female nudity when I picked up a Batman comic for the first time in many years. Far be it for me to put down female nudity, but such images are certain to provide a potent distraction to children entering puberty, as well as to encourage a eugenics-friendly playboyism of the kind advocated by Hugh Hefner himself, an admitted acolyte of eugenicist Alfred Kinsey. Families who have taken the Dr. Spock or New Age amalgam to heart are another source of problems in childhood discipline. For a kid whose rose model is Tupac, Ice-T, Kiss, or Marilyn Manson, and whose fantasies are fed by the quick-cut toxified kink of MTV, timeout is not going to be an effective disciplinary action. Another one, little parental contact with kids at all. The prevailing economy, regardless of the praises of Rapegate Bill, is designed, we got to look that up, Rapegate Bill. Rapegate Bill. 1999, folks. Who else would he be talking about? That's freaking weird. The prevailing economy, regardless of the praises of Rapegate Bill, is designed so that both parents usually have to slave full-time, leaving very few moments for contact with the kids. The situation of the single-parent family is usually worse. Finally, there is a problem with the nature of public schooling itself, which does not challenge children to learn or to think creatively, but instead indoctrinates them to conform to their prison-like surroundings. I personally would not like to endure again the circumstances of regimentation and immobilization, sitting at an uncomfortable desk with hands folded and mouth clamped shut for hours every day, that children are forced to put up with in public schools. I would also not relish again being forced to drag my eyes over and memorize deadly, dull text that no sane adult would ever read if given a choice in the matter. In circumstances like these, it is no surprise that any children with an ounce of wit or energy would rebel and begin to longingly ogle his father's gun cabinet. These are some of the real causes of ADD and ADHD in school, symptoms for which children are being treated with Ritalin and other addictive drugs. A dramatic example of the results of drugging children may have been played out on April 20th, 1999 in Littleton, Colorado, when two young men in black trench coats systematically killed 12 of their schoolmates and then themselves. Columbine. Eric Harris, one of the shooters, had been turned down from joining the Marines a scant 5 days prior, when they were informed that he was being prescribed the psychiatric antidepressant drug fluvoxamine maleate, or Luvox, a chemical relative to Ritalin. The American Journal of Psychiatry, again by eugenicists, reports that our observations confirm the efficacy of fluvoxamine, Luvox, in the treatment of depression, but suggests that this drug can induce mania in some patients when it is given at a normal dose. It may induce mania. No big deal. The coroner's report showed that Harris had therapeutic levels of Luvox in his bloodstream at the time of the shooting, and friends of Harris state the young man was attempting to quit using the drug in the days prior to the shooting. There is no indication that the drugging of children is going to diminish in the near future, quite the contrary. In an address by James Basco at the National School Boards Association, he said, "In my crystal ball, I see that the teacher of the 21st century will not be trained in schools of education as we know them today, but rather will be trained in a school which is an amalgam of contemporary schools of education, medicine, and pharmacy. A considerable portion of the teacher's training will be devoted to understanding physiology and psychopharmacology. which will equip the teacher to administer drugs which affect learning and learning-related behaviors. Nor should we be surprised, since the advent of progressive education, schools have not been intended to educate but simply to regiment. Whew! That was one chapter, folks. So, I want to talk about something. In the year 1999, I was living in Hollywood in an apartment, and I had a friend named Lauren, and he lived with me for a while. I believe I paid all the full rent myself. I don't remember, but I remember that I was helping him. And he was attempting to come off of Ritalin. He had been on it his whole life. And wow, dude. So that 6 months of my life was so flipping intense. I remember thinking to myself, if I survive this, I'm good. You know? During that time, I was also a massage therapist, and I was massaging celebrities. And one of my jobs was to massage celebrities. And because I was an energy worker, but like not really aware of my full capacities as an energetic worker, but more just like I was just doing it and not realizing what I was doing, but I could see, right? I was a seer, so I was able to see what was happening and I was able to clear it, but I was just doing it naturally. I hadn't formed any sort of formal training with it, and I didn't have like, all I had was my massage therapy training, right? And I was an actress, so I was, auditioning and stuff like that. So during that time, I had also brought in the furniture and the belongings of my mother, who had gone into a home, and I was like going through all her stuff and trying to deal with, all these things I had had in storage, and I was trying to consolidate and sell off the belongings from my childhood home. So here's what I want to bring up. Energetically speaking, I had a guy with Ritalin trying to come down off Ritalin, opening portals in his bedroom in my house, and he painted his bathroom blood red. Okay. And he painted his room this purple color, and he was maybe like, I don't know, was he like 19 years old? He was young. And I was like in my late 20s, and we were both in the program of AA, and we were both, just sober and trying to make it happen, But I remember the amount of demonic activity that was happening in that situation. I, for whatever reason, seemed to be completely protected from what was going on, but I was literally surrounded by demons and entities and things happening on that level, right? To the point where even my ex-boyfriend from high school came into my field, and he was also, I should actually look into that whole situation again very, very specifically and like track that, because there were so many things that happened. My sister and I had a falling out for the first time in our lives. It was profound. That apartment became a portal of darkness and light. It was both. It was like a vortex, But watching him go through the trying to get himself off of these, drugs that were demonic, literally. I remember saying to him, bro, you gotta, like, wow, and he was doing everything in his power to get off of these drugs. because he was sober and he wanted to stay sober and he really wanted to have a sober experience. He was just really desiring to be free of all this influence, of all these different drugs and alcohol and all of the dual diagnosis and him having to go to the mental ward every freaking whatever. It was crazy. It was crazy. And so I was in the program for, a solid 15 years, and I would see a lot of dual diagnosis. I would see a lot of suicide. So many people died. There was a person dying every week from drug overdose or suicide or something. I mean, it was exhausting on some level, but it was also a really strong witnessing for me to be able to witness the levels of mental illness and how it affects people, and sobriety and being sober off with alcoholism, and just really understanding deeply what, the dysfunctional family unit and all the levels that happen with this disease, right? Which now I think isn't just alcoholism or, whatever mental illness. I actually think that we have been designed this way through propaganda, and, society itself has been programmed and set up for this level of control. And so for me, engineering human consciousness, like, hi, and I, am from a family, I come from a family where I was literally sold pre-birth into a situation where, I was utilized for lots of things. And one of them was the Human Genome Project, which is, I was being told it was for the benefit of humanity and that I was somehow doing something good for everyone else and being tortured in the process of that. So it's really fascinating to go back and look at all the levels of mind control that were instilled within my family structure, in my family, and in my personal consciousness and my psyche, and all the levels that it has taken for me to dismantle the mind control programs that existed within me, and the elitism that existed within me, and the arrogance that existed within me, and all the levels that have humbled me over the years to be able to be here now and just be fully present with my experience and not be influenced by, outside voices or internal voices for that matter. I have now developed a system of healing that has protocols to dismantle those aspects in our consciousness. And I feel deeply, deeply compelled in this way to study this information and to find solutions for the deep indoctrination of society and how it has affected us. It for me, it's like my whole reality, and necessary. And why aren't more people talking about this? You know what I mean? Like, why are we not all having this conversation? It's beyond me. Look what's happening in the world right now. This is the beginning of August in 2020. This book was written at the turn of the year 2000, or published at the turn of the year 2000. And at that point, it was 100 years of eugenics. Now we're 120 years in, but in the past 20 years has sped by so quickly. Like it blows. Yesterday, Like yesterday feels like 2000 to me. I can't even believe how fast. I used to say in the 90s, we're in a celestial speed up. Like I could feel it happening in my body. I was like, we are going into a celestial speed up. We're going to speed up. Everything's going to speed up. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Nobody believed me. Nobody believed me 20 years ago. Also, about 30 years ago, I was saying things about observing the male species and how they weren't being given the opportunity to heal, to cry, to be able to express their feelings, that they were going to need support, and that it was going to be imperative for them to have support to dismantle the programming that was present in the male population. And I was 20 years old when I said that. Okay? I could see it then. And that was like 1990, 89, 90, like fresh out of high school into college. I was already seeing the deep levels of indoctrination within the male population. And the women were different then. The women were not like they are now. The feminism wasn't as extreme as it is now. And women, cared about each other. There was a little bit of cattiness, but it wasn't on the level that it is now, where people are slicing each other at every left turn, right and center. And then there's the women that do care and nurture each other and really care about each other and do what they can to support other women. But then there's this middle place where women support each other, but at the deflection of man hater woman thing, where they have to be, in control or whatever. And that doesn't work either. So there's this getting back to the natural way of being as feminine, masculine, and learning how to balance those two energies within us, the masculine and feminine within ourselves, like within our consciousness, right? Like that's a lot of what this is about, is the massive imbalance on both sides, because there's been this steering into the androgynal reality, but like in a distorted way that doesn't actually create balance at all, but it creates this, it goes, and it like does this thing where all of a sudden you're stretched out into this little line and you can't even discern whether you're what you are. Like you can't tell, you're confused. There's a confusion happening. And the only way to deprogram that confusion is to come back into your center, to come back into your heart, and to come back into your right alignment, your vertical alignment, and not be looking outside of yourself or receiving outside information. You've got to get this channel clear in order to hear your own voice, to hear your own frequency, right? Because your own frequency is where your energetic signature is and is contained. And if you're not taking care of your frequency and your field, your energetic body, your energetic matrix, then anything can come in and just have its way with you. If you're not embodied, if you're not here. So all of these distractions, all of these things, media, all the things that are happening, all of that is designed to keep you out of this, to keep you out of here, out of your body. We got to ground into our bodies and with nature, with Gaia. Like nature doesn't lie. Nature is truth. It never changes. It's always there, and it's always truth. You can see how nature has been affected by humans, and where the energy is off, and where the energy has been compromised, or the land has been raped. You can see it with your naked eye, right? So if you were to imagine that we as human beings are nature, right? And our essence is being stripped from us systematically by our educational systems, by some religious systems, by societal systems, by all the media and the news channel, like everything, all the input that's coming in outside of nature, the natural world, is somehow being controlled and manipulated, including the weather. Now there's a manipulation of the natural world, right? So how do we get back to this? How do we get back to the truth of who we are and the center of our being? Like, how do we hold that? The only way we can hold that is with source. Our own source energy, because we are not separate from it. As organic living souls in human form, we are source energy incarnate. And so if we don't cultivate and take care of that, then anything's possible. We can just be swayed one way, one direction or the other. We have to stay here, And when we observe others and use discernment in terms of actions, the actions and the energies that people have and the actions that people take that are authentic or not, right? We need to check in with ourselves. What resonates, what doesn't? What do we trust? What really feels real to us? But not from a trauma-informed decision, not from a trauma-informed viewpoint or lenses, but from an objective, centered place within our hearts where we know the truth. And what's happening right now is there's all of these projections being thrown at good people and dark magic distorting the truth so that we can't see it. It's being veiled, and they keep trying to veil it so we can't see what's really going on, so that we can't unify, right? Why would they do that? Because they have something to hide. Even though they're operating in plain sight and we can all see what's going on, why is it that more people aren't paying attention and using their critical thinking skills, right? Why? Because their consciousness has been fucked with. So when you see somebody that says unfuckwithable, this is what they mean. You can't fuck with me. You can't fuck with my consciousness. You can't fuck with my God source. You can't fuck with my organic source presence within me. You can't sway me. I cannot be swayed. Regardless if I think somebody's good or bad, doesn't really matter. Their actions warrant objectively me observing their actions. And if their actions are for the better of humanity, for the good of humanity, I'm going to pay attention to that. Does that mean they're 100% holy? No. Everyone is human. Not everyone is human. But those who are human tend to take actions for the betterment of humanity more so than those that do not have human souls and human origin. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not galactic and have a galactic soul incarnate. What I'm talking about is those who are actually not human or have lost their human souls, that are dissociated and they're disconnected from themselves, and then an energy comes in and is able to move through them and operate through them, and they're being controlled. That's not human. That's an interdimensional being controlling a human. And I say interdimensional because they can take physical form, but usually what they do is they control and host a physical human body rather than shapeshift. That happens too, but the shapeshifting is really an interdimensional being hosting a human form, a human body. That's, in my experience, that's what I've seen happen. But there are then those that are in physical form or can manifest a physical body to show up in the physical third dimensional reality, because our physical plane is actually 5D now, still physical though, up to 12 dimensions, it's physical. And then once you hit the 13th dimension, it goes into, antimatter, antimatter, A-N-T-E matter, liquid. So, trying to think if there's anything else that I want to talk about in relation to that. The reason why I don't use the words like demons or reptilians or Dracos or whatever is because regardless of where they come from, they're still interdimensional beings, right? And they where they are is like in the astral, lower astral reality where they can control the physical, right? And so if you go up past that and you go into the fifth dimensional reality, doesn't mean they're not there. It just means that it's harder for them to exist in the now moment. They have to have the time construct and the lockdown matrix and the false matrix to be able to operate and manipulate and control someone in the physical reality that's here. Matrix. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I hope so. I see that people are, oh, maybe they aren't. Maybe it's my imagination. Oh no, there are people. Common sense needs nurturing for all humanity. Thank you, Violet. So true. Common sense is what I was referring to in terms of the discernment piece and the understanding of who we are as a core source being incarnate in a physical body. A natural way of being is common sense. It's nonsensical what we're witnessing. Like, it makes no sense. Like, I went out to have a meal with my friend, right? We went to one of the restaurants that was open, one of very few. And so we went and sat down on Mississippi, there's a bunch of outdoor patios that they've established and built for people so that nobody's inside anymore, right? Which is great because it's summertime and it's warm and it's awesome that they're all outside. So what's funny is you literally have to, this is fucking hysterical, you guys. Like, oh my God, okay? There's a sign that says mandatory masks required to be in this establishment, okay? So in order for you to stand in line, you have to wear a mask, okay? To order your food that has a glass window now, at the food thing where you order your food, you have to stand 6 feet away, but you have to speak up in order to talk to the person in the fucking thing behind the fucking glass. Okay? With your mask on to order your food. And then once you're sitting down with whoever you're with, you can take your mask off to eat your food. In the same establishment, in the same place that requires to have mandatory masks. Are you? Oh, and then it says, intolerance will not be tolerated. And this is it was something like a racial LGBTQ tolerant space or something. And it says, intolerance will not be tolerated. The way that I look at masks being required, that in and of itself is an oxy-fucking-moron, because that to me is intolerant of using your brain to think logically with common sense. They're telling you that you can't use your own common sense to figure out how to stay far away from somebody for Okay. I was about to go off, and I'm deciding not to because I don't know who's watching right now, and I don't know what your beliefs are, and I want to respect the fact that I have my opinion, but maybe you have yours, and that's totally fine. That doesn't mean I don't want to express my opinion. But it's been an hour. I've been on here an hour, and I just feel like I've said quite a bit. But just to say that, oh, and then there's this huge sign on this building across from the restaurant that said, abolish the police. So who are you going to call when somebody's like taking you down on the street? There's not going to be anybody answering the 911, right? Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Abolishing is different than defunding. Defunding is different than reform. And not all police. And 99% of the time, police are busy every single day, all day long, dealing with criminals. Okay? And if they were violent with every single criminal, like, come on, man, we would know about it. The police have a very difficult job. Like, are you kidding me right now? So the people that have not read the Constitution of the United States, the people that have not been educated because our educational systems are fucked, those indoctrination people, the people who've been indoctrinated, don't even know what the frickin' common sense is. They don't even know how to have common sense because they've been indoctrinated into the groupthink. Groupthink. It's frightening. It is absolutely frightening. I just read in this book how before the year 2000, when cell phones came out, before we even had smartphones, which was in 2010? 2011? That it was an average of 6 hours a day that children were watching television. Now, every single child from the age of maybe 3 years old has one of these. Just, I mean, think about it, you know, like we set ourselves up for this. Not enough spoke up soon enough. And now we're here. And we've all known this whole time that this is what's happening. But we chose to ignore it. We chose to just move on with our lives and focus on something more positive. To try to not have to deal with the level of pain involved in facing the indoctrination of our fucking society. That's the truth that I feel. This is just my opinion. Take it or leave it. This is just my opinion. But this is an organized event. And there's only a few people right now fighting for our freedom. A very small percentage of people are fighting for the freedom of the entire population of the world. And gall darn it, I'm going to recognize and acknowledge that for real. It's very important. Very important. And I'm fucking grateful that somebody's doing it. Somebody's fucking has the power to speak up and do something about it. And those people are being vilified by the mainstream media. Of course. Because all of those people that own the media or are involved with the media on any level, they all own everything and fund human trafficking. It's the biggest business on this planet. $151 billion a year. A year. People are selling children and passing them around, murdering them for pleasure, and then drinking their blood and eating their flesh. It's real, folks. And nobody wants to talk about it. Really? At this point, it's the only unifying piece we have right now. It's the only unifying conscious subject matter that actually is not being talked about on a large scale, but now is coming and being revealed and shown and witnessed. And still people don't want to believe it. And still they're like, oh no, that couldn't be happening. Really? Hi, my name is Saralise. I'm a survivor of human trafficking. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm alive. I'm alive. Don't forget that. The sleeping giants will awaken. I'm gonna leave it at that. I love you. Thanks for listening to me. Thanks for listening to my intenseness. I appreciate you for being here with me. I don't even know who's here. I love you all. Thank you for even tuning into my field and witnessing me in any way, shape, or form. I'm grateful. So I hope you all are doing okay out there. And I know that it's rough, and I'm with you. I'm on the front lines of this war, and it is a war. And on the other side of this, though, is something really, really beautiful. And we have to go through this tunnel right now. That's just, again, this is just my opinion. We have to go through this tunnel right now. And there's no stopping it. There's no way to get out of the tunnel. We're in the tunnel, you guys. Like, we're in the tunnel. And there is light through the tunnel. I'm not going to say the end of the tunnel. There's light through the tunnel. And if we just keep going through the tunnel in the light stream, we will come out the other side of it. But there's going to be a lot of darkness before that happens. And we're going to have to breathe, and we're going to have to process our own shit. We're going to have to process our lives, and any abuse that we have endured throughout our lives will come up during this process. And I got to tell you right now, I am so deeply grateful that I have done the work that I've done, because as I'm going through this process right now, I'm still not sleeping at night. I'm still not able to reconcile some of the things that I personally went through. They still have not been reconciled. They've been addressed, they've been acknowledged, they've been processed, they've been emotionally processed, mentally processed, physically processed, spiritually processed. Have they been reconciled? I don't think they'll be reconciled until this shit is off the fucking planet. That's the truth. Until this shit is over and does not exist, we are going to be cleaning up this mess. And in order for us to go to the next level of consciousness and awareness as a collective, I personally feel that it is necessary for us to clean up our mess. We have a lot of work to do, folks. And it's not easy. But we can't ignore it anymore. We can't ignore this anymore. Not when 8 million people a year are being trafficked. We just can't. 8 million people a year. 1 million of those a year are children. And those are the ones accounted for. That doesn't include the ones that we never hear about and that we don't see. Please think about that. Just let that sink in for a minute. We need to take action. We need to start talking about this. It doesn't matter what people think of us. They need to wake up. Period. Come on, man. You know, when 2012 came around and we were all celebrating this, you know, the end of the world and going into the golden age. And all I could think about were the children. That's all I could think about. All I could think about were all the people on the planet that had been abused and that it was continuing. And that there was a dark web. And this was in 2012, 8 years ago. I wasn't celebrating yet. Everybody else was. Woo, ha, hee, ha. And I was doing DNA activation ceremonies and, facilitating ceremonies at festivals. 8 festivals that summer I did. It's a lot, man. But the whole time, there was this underbelly of evil. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's dealing with it. I was an anomaly back then. I've been talking about this shit for 20 years or more. I'm fucking exhausted. I've been in this a long time, my whole life. But talking about it, I've been talking about it for a really long time. So, thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it. I know this is painful to sit through. So thank you. I appreciate you sitting through me, expressing myself. But my heart is just, my heart. My heart. My heart wants to see everyone free. My heart wants to see the world flourish and thrive and be at peace, where there's no chance of someone being manipulated into anything, that we can all have our sovereign choices and we can all be in our discernment and our sovereignty and hold that frequency every day, all day long. That's what I want to see happen. Where our core values are real and they nourish us and they make sure that everyone is included and everyone benefits. The bloodshed needs to stop. I got really worked up there. Thank you for listening to me. I'm going to see what these comments say really quick. Yes, the kids are hooked up to neural network quantum processing software that navigates the multiverse. This is true. Sarah, you definitely need to make t-shirts. Thank you, James, for saying about my lovely smile. McLean, I'm glad you're here. Hi. Hi. Kat, I'm so glad you came on here. She knew what I was talking about. Girl, you knew what I was talking about. I'm always talking about it. Police are the bullet, not the gun. Wow, that's a good meme, dude. That's a really good meme. Police are the bullet, not the gun. Common sense needs nurturing. I said that. Hi, Leroy. I don't know if you're still here. I don't know who's still here. Molecules with a geometry to function as radio antenna for certain frequency broadcasting. Yes. Remote controlling humans. Yes, this is what I've been talking about tonight. Drugs used for MK Ultra. It works on adults. We get 2-second memes for that now. Yes, and reality is subjective. Absolutely subjective. Engaging is optional. Welcome to the sim. Katem, you're funny, man. Carnegie did not build all those buildings. They were found and claimed. Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah. They were claimed. But they were built. We just don't know when they were built. That's a question I have, Katem, that I'm wondering if you have the answer to. I don't know if you're still here, but in terms of Tartaria, I don't know enough about it, but if you guys haven't done any research and you like to research things, Tartaria, Tartaria, and mud flood would be the two hashtags that I would recommend you guys research. It's fascinating. There's all these phenomenally built, beautiful, ornate, gorgeous buildings that were built in the 1800s, supposedly, that are, work for giants to be able to walk through the columns, right? They're big, like hugely ornate, giant, beautiful buildings. And nobody knows how they got there. There's some in New Zealand. Like when there was supposedly no way to get to New Zealand from the mainland, right? Or from England or whatever. It's fascinating. There's like modern technology and modern buildings and architecture that were built over 100 years ago. So it's fascinating. It's one of the biggest cover-ups we have going, and nobody wants to talk about it. And so there's a lot of people that are researching it now to try to figure out what it is and what happened, because it's all been covered up. Thank you for being here, everybody. Loving you. Sending you so many blessings. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight.